For Russia, May 9th is not a comedy show with people playing keyboard instruments. For us, it is a sacred day because every family of ours suffered. If you consider that 27 million victims were brought to the altar of victory by the Soviet Union, the Russian SFSR, that is, today's Russian Federation, lost almost 70%. In the post-war period, the Russian SFSR's share was almost 70% of the losses, 69-something. But calculate, if 27 million people is the total loss, then how much is Russia's loss? Well, almost 19 million people.
In a blistering address that left the world stunned, Vladimir Putin delivers a savage takedown of Ukraine's cynical Victory Day politics, exposing their desperate bid to steal the spotlight from Russia's historic celebrations. With razor-sharp wit and unyielding fury, Putin roasts Ukraine's so-called comedy show Ceasefire games. Mocking their theatrical last-minute truce announcements, Putin unleashed scorching fury, solemnly honoring the sacred blood of 19 million Russians slaughtered in the Great Patriotic War, while savagely exposing Ukraine's vile mockery. Putin slammed Kyiv's laughable last-minute truce stunt, which comes rushing in only after a Trump-backed Russian proposal hits the table, revealing Ukraine's frantic scramble to derail genuine peace talks. Putin dropped a vicious truth bomb on the global stage, shattering Western illusions by showcasing Moscow's surging military might, economic resilience, and unbreakable spirit amid the grinding Ukraine conflict.
During the last phone conversation with U.S. President Mr. Donald Trump, we discussed May 9th. And by the way, he spoke about it in a very worthy manner, in my opinion. He recalled our alliance in the common fight against Nazism. And I told him that I planned to announce May 8th to 9th. Why the 8th? Because in the West, Victory Day is on the 8th, and Ukraine has joined the tradition. They now, I think, also consider the 8th as Victory Day. But that's not important. What is important is that President Trump actively supported it, ceasefire, and we literally announced it the next day. But as soon as we announced it, there was no reaction from anyone. Then, after a day or two, when apparently, in Kyiv they thought over and realized that this was supported by the U.S. administration, they considered it beneficial to react. But how to react? Simply agreeing with our proposal. They, apparently, considered it unprofitable. So they came up with another proposal, a truce running from the 6th. For Russia, May 9th is not a comedy show with people playing keyboard instruments. For us, it is a sacred day because every family of ours suffered. If you consider that 27 million victims were brought to the altar of victory by the Soviet Union, the Russian SFSR, that is, today's Russian Federation, lost almost 70%. In the post-war period, the Russian SFSR's share was almost 70% of the losses, 69-something. But calculate, if 27 million people is the total loss, then how much is Russia's loss? Well, almost 19 million people. Of course, for us, this is an event that concerns every citizen of the Russian Federation, every one of our families. And we don't play any games here. We proposed a truce for 2 days. There was no reaction. And then suddenly some games started. We don't play these games. But since there was a proposal from a U.S. president to also hold an exchange, which we ourselves proposed on May 5th, well, you can ask Russia's FSB Director Alexander Bortnikov. He won't hide it. We sent a whole list, 500 people for exchange. Certainly, we welcomed it and were ready to do it. And we extended this truce for another 2 days in the hope of conducting an exchange. Well, I hope that in the end we do it. We have never been closed to negotiations. Never. It wasn't us who refused. They did.
European politicians put pressure on the leaders who gathered in Moscow and generally continue attempts to rewrite history, erase the role of the Soviet Union in the victory over Nazism. How do you assess this activity, and where can it lead Europe?
Stupidity can lead to poverty. First, the stronger Russia becomes, the faster it will fade away. Second, as for why this is happening at all, I believe that this is a manifestation, strange as it may sound, of revanchism on the part of those very globalist Western elites that I've already mentioned. We'd rather not go into detail. It's late. What do I mean? After all, I already said, and we all know this, that everyone expected a quick collapse of Russia. Within 6 months, everything should have, in their opinion, fallen apart. Enterprises should have stopped. The banking system should have ceased to work. Millions of people should have ended up on the street. By the way, we have the lowest unemployment among all G20 countries. 2.2% so far. Everyone expected to grab something from Russia. To snatch something. Excuse the simplicity of the expression. Why did Finland join NATO? Did we have any territorial disputes with Finland? No. Everything was resolved long ago. Nothing was needed. And the leadership of Finland understood this perfectly. Why did they go to NATO? And in NATO, probably, the thinking was that everything would collapse here, and then they would be there to take and run. They are already building a border along the Sestra River. I would make a certain gesture and say something, but since I am from the cultural capital, I will refrain. But I think that to a large extent, what is happening is dictated precisely by considerations of this kind. But now, when the understanding comes that everything is not so simple, that problems arise, that overcoming them is quite difficult, and that it is better to look for ways to resume normal relations, better to move towards some agreements, mutually acceptable agreements. And by the way, we have always built relations with Europe on the principles of mutual respect and consideration for each other's interests, and that is not an empty diplomatic phrase. We did exactly that. Not everyone speaks with Europe like that today. But we only spoke like that, always. But that seemed not enough. I hope that the realization that this was a mistaken position has now begun to emerge and will strengthen. And in the end, we will still restore relations with many countries that today are trying to anathematize our relationship. But the sooner this happens, the better for us, and in this case, for the European countries as well.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.